I was pretty impressed. I was looking at some of those videos. They're pretty impressive, some of the results,
I'm
especially the Nazi
like
one.
That one was crazy. That one was.
Do you think that was because it was Nazi? I mean, do you think because the name was in it that attracted the attention, or what was it about that one in specific?
It was. I think everybody hates Nazis, and I think when you
totally.
see Nazis rally for any sort of cause, it kind of is a red flag for everybody. That one was one that shocked me when it went viral. That was the first one that really went like that. A few of them I've done.
Keep going.
A few of them that I've done, I have intended for them to be big, or I have like a
that
gut
one
feeling.
You didn't though. That
one I didn't.
Like...
I wasn't wearing any makeup. I was just like, this is bad. I don't like this. This is bad. Like, we should not be for this. And it just kind of happened that way. But I think that anytime, it's a way to get clicks whenever you bring up Nazis, right? So you just want to be very responsible in doing that. And when you put Nazis plus transgender, it's double quick.
Everybody wants to click.
Yeah. So that was totally like.
Were you watching like a video or something? Like how did you come up with that idea? Did you see another post of something that, or was it just, the theme of that video was media displays all the worst in us.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So what caused that to?
I've been kind of like I've talked to you about this. I have a lot of anxiety over stuff that's happening in the news. I don't like the way that either side is kind of talking about the news stuff. And so that one just popped up on my feed. And it was one of those moments where I reacted from a very genuine, authentic, anxious place. And it was, I don't think that's very commonplace. I think people do like protest LGBT events and things like that, but I'm from Ohio. So when I saw Nazis like protesting, I was like, where the heck did these people come from? Like the Ohio that I know isn't really like that. I'm from Columbus. It's very like inner city and open-minded, and there's like a bunch of gay bars and things like that. I wasn't used to seeing anything like that. So it just came from a really genuine reaction. And that was the video. It has like 1.7 million views. It blew my TikTok up. I don't know what I was intending to really do with that. I was just kind of like felt a calling to speak up because I'm a voice that is neither conservative nor liberal. And I have a lot of, economically conservative views and some liberal views and stuff like that. And I was like, nobody is talking about transgender issues from this kind of perspective. So I was just kind of speaking up. And my friends would be like, wow, when you say this stuff, it makes sense in a way that it doesn't make sense when other people are talking. You're not coming from an ideological perspective and things like that. I posted that TikTok and I woke up with hundreds of thousands of likes. And I have like, in the span of 2 months, have grown 17,000 followers. And, from a work perspective, I always want to have a project. I have had projects over the last couple of years. I learned to code because I made an application that follows like COVID trends. I don't know if you remember that, but I'm like, I'm in charge of the marketing stuff at Brokers Alliance right now. This is a good skill for me to have and bring back to the company.
So would you say in the community, the transgender community, it's not necessarily, I'm going to guess, I could be totally wrong. It's not necessarily your views that are unique. It's the fact that you're speaking them out loud.
I think that's 1,000% right, because the loudest, most clickable voices are always the ones that get the most attention.
Crazies.
It's crazy. Yeah, a lot of people are crazy.
On all sides.
On all sides.
That's what struck me the coolest thing about watching some of your TikToks is they say logical things. Like there's not, and I didn't watch them all, but I watched enough to know there wasn't anything in there that to me was mind blowing or it just all made sense. It just makes sense. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't agree with, but it all makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you see that it's going viral. And like, I was trying to wrap my mind around why is that? Because you're talking logic. You're talking the real world. You're talking sensible things. And that makes me go, as our country and world actually so fucked up that if someone speaks sensible things, it's like it's a brand new thing.
It's a never-ending loop. I used to blame the media for this. I'm like, the media is making us like want to be all crazy, and they're perpetuating this sensationalism. But the reality is, if we didn't like to be entertained all the time, then that wouldn't happen in the first place. They wouldn't put out sensational content. So I think it's like a loop where we're feeding into the sensationalism by chasing cheap dopamine all the time, and the media is kind of feeding off of that. And I think there is a big demand for sensibility, but you also, even in some of my videos, I mean, I'm a little bit more animated than I would be in those videos versus just talking to you. I'm a little bit more fiery in those videos because emotion is what ultimately in marketing sells your message.
Yeah, I feel like the media, you said the media was the issue, or you used to think that media was the issue. I think they've become just business. They're just businesses. Like we used to, my parents, I'm sure, thought of Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather, you know, and these people, strangely enough, all like older white men.
Yeah.
But those are just the people you counted on for your news. And it was just news. It was what they said it was. And up until some of the scandals in the 80s and 90s, you just trusted that. And then you started to figure out, oh, that wasn't quite the way it went down. And now it's just, I want to hear that my position is right, and so I'm going to tune into CNN. Or I want to hear that my position is bolstered, and I want to tune into Fox. Or I'm going to tune into whatever, like you said, gives me that, oh yeah, I'm thinking the right way because this channel just said it, or this talking head just said it. And it's most of the time, I think, bullshit. You know, I grew up super conservative.
Yeah.
I would say I'm a libertarian now if someone had to put me in a box, because I think both sides are just full of shit. I really do. Agreed. And I used to watch or get on the Fox app every day for my news. Now I don't know where to get it from. I go to Google, and I think even that's a little bit twisted because it just learns what you want to learn, see, and puts that in front of your face. I'm sure there's more out there that I should do research on to get my news. But I just got so tired of hearing the same thing. And if you get on Fox and you watch through that, there will be some things that resonate with me when we talk about financial things, but then some other things that go, you're twisting that. I just know you're twisting that because Trump's kind of an asshole and he's a super egotistical narcissist, but you're painting him in this other light, you know, like I get that he made the right call with Live Golf and the PGA Tour.
Right.
He's a great businessman, but he's a narcissist and he's too old to run again. But nobody will say those kind of things because that crowd doesn't want to hear that. But that's true. Like, just stand up and say that's the way it is. So you came from a conservative background too.
Very,
very conservative. And your parents, how are they handling what you're going through over the last 4 or 5 years?
By using their favorite tool, denial. I come from a super conservative Muslim family, so that creates its own type of complications because we were Muslim, but my family was super Democrat growing up. And so I just never felt like my values that I was raised with like were reflected in like some of the party politics that I saw. And being gay was just an idea that they could not wrap their minds around. And so I didn't tell them until I was in my mid-20s. And being trans is just something that is beyond their conception. It's honestly their worst nightmare. So luckily, I think my path towards handling those aspects of myself is becoming hyper independent and successful in my own right, so that I'm just able to drop the facts on them and I'm like, you could like it or you could not like it, but I'm going to do what it is that I'm going to do because we only have one life and I feel like it's important for me to live it authentically.
Yeah. What about from the business perspective? You've done a ton already, and when you first moved out here, you were, I'm sure, struggling to find your place both in business and just in the real world. Were you leaning on them a lot then? And then as you become more successful, you're able to just kind of pull back and deliver those facts? Is that how that progressed?
No, I grew up super poor. So that was another complicating factor. I knew I was poor when I was a kid, but I'm like, I'm not going to be like this forever. Like, I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to work very, very hard. I've always had the working hard thing. I was always very like super high energy, involved in all the like student groups and political groups at school and stuff like that. I've always been very outspoken. And so I carried that into college. I liked being like that in college. And when it was time for me to move to Phoenix, I scrounged up the cash by throwing a graduation party. So just a few grand. And then I utilized that money to move over here. I utilized a friend to get a job at Yelp. It's the first place I worked doing ads and stuff like that. And I basically did everything by myself. I slept on a mattress on the floor for 3 or 4 years because my credit was so bad because I didn't know what to do with money. So, and my credit was bad because my parents were like, well, you don't have to pay things back. Turns out you got to pay things back, you know? So I lived like a pauper for years of my life because I just didn't know what I was doing. And I'm still finding my footing now. Thank God I'm working at a place that literally I have so many good resources like yourself to guide me in the right direction, but I'm still correcting some really, really bad habits.
You know what's really interesting to me, when we talk about this, I'm homeschooling the kids with Christy, and it's really interesting. The one thing that you don't get is financial education. And the idea of, well, let's talk about the stock market to my 9-year-old and some of the other parents going, what? Why would we do that? You know, because they never got it. I never got it. You know, I remember my favorite math course was in a book, and I distinctly remember this. It was talking about how to balance a checkbook. And it's such a simple thing now to me to think, but the millions of people that are coming out of school that don't know how to balance a checkbook, and that's just, is that part of the machine? That's just part of call it a political machine, call it the industrial machine. It's part of the machine. They need people that don't know how to do those things.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have your credit card companies benefiting. You're going to have your labor market benefiting because you got to keep your hourly job. You can never break out of that and become something more because you're a slave to the grind.
Are you seeing a payoff with doing that already?
I hope so. You know, like the kids have a debit card now they use. Then Chase does a great job. Shout out to Chase because they have a chores app. You know, they have their mobile banking app, but the kids have a login. So I can assign them chores and they can check it off the box and there's a dollar amount attributed to it, what each worth. And they can choose, you know, what chores they want to do, what's the dollar value, how much time is it going to take me to do it. If I can get this one done quick and it's worth $2 versus this one's going to take me 30 minutes and it's only worth $2.50, maybe I won't do this one, I'll do that one. And those, so I think they're starting to grasp the time is money.
Yeah.
That's what I really want them to. I never want them to trade their time for money.
Right.
I want them to be able to discern like what's going to get me there the best way. So I think it's, you know, they're 9 and 6, so
okay.
We'll see.
We'll see. Yeah. Hopefully it does work. I think one of the things that I had growing up as well, and I will give my parents credit for this. I mean, they made us take school very, very seriously, which is common in the Bengali culture. And they kind of had an attitude of, well, if you don't do it, it's not going to get done. And so I inherited that attitude, and I always knew, like, I knew I was transgender since I was like 5 years old. I didn't know what all that would mean by the time I turned 30, but I knew that, you know, my existence would be stigmatized. I knew that it was going to be expensive somehow. And I knew that I had to make everything happen on my own. So I've always been a very good planner. That doesn't include like financial stuff. It really includes like over the next 5 years, what am I going to do to be able to afford this? And so that's kind of how I've been.
So you were looking out a decade in the future, would you say?
More than that. Yeah. 15, 20 years. I mean, ever since I saw like, I knew I was 5. When I was 5 years old, it's a bizarre experience because the way that you know is even before you know, you're like playing with Barbies and then your parents and other people are reacting to you weird. You know, in the moments like when you're in, you know, kindergarten and you're trying to go hang out with the girls for gym class and you're not allowed to, and you're like, oh my God, why am I feeling grief over this? Like, you know that you are born a boy, but that doesn't feel right. And then when I was a teenager, I was like, well, maybe I'll have a female, you know, adolescence. Like maybe I will have a female puberty. Didn't happen. And so you just kind of keep on rolling into distress because of those reasons. But there is something in the back of your gut that is constantly pushing you in that direction. And for a long time in my 20s, I was like doing well by many accounts. I was really happy at work. I was like, had friends and stuff like that. But I felt kind of like a sidekick in my own story. And that was very strange to experience. And being that I was such a planner, I was like, okay, well, what do I have left to plan besides maybe a relationship and maybe some more career stuff? Why isn't any of this fulfilling? And one day I like went to Target and just like bought some makeup and put it on, and I looked crazy and ghastly. But it felt like I took this like really, really big, deep breath. And I was like, oh, this was the thing that was missing. And I never felt like the sidekick in my own story ever again.
Do you think the time of the world that we're living in now makes it a little bit easier versus if in other words, if you were thinking of this in 2010 or 2012, you'd have a very different environment around you than what exists today.
I'm thankful. I don't know what I would do in those circumstances. It's possible that I would have stayed in the closet for longer, but a lot of people back then, I mean, we're only 1% of the population. A lot of people transitioned even back then, and what they would do is transition quietly, and then we would call it living in stealth. So they would do all of their surgeries and stuff like that and just move to another state and just pretend to be a completely different person. So I could see myself easily doing something like that as
well. You brought up Target, so
yes.
There you go.
Let's talk about
you're a
Target.
marketing genius, so I want to hear from your perspective what went on with Bud Light and Target. What's happening? How do you frame it in your mind? What do you think about it?
I think the left has been boycotting businesses for years and years and years, and they've been doing it successfully. And some of it has been justified. A lot of it has not been justified. And I think that there is a demographic on the right that's like, okay, well, we can also stand up for our values as well. So I see some of it as like this is the right coming to boycott something that they don't believe in again, which is in their power to do. The Bud Light boycott and the Target boycott are a little bit different. I think Bud Light messed up a little bit more because they utilized a person that just did not fit the marketing persona that buys Bud Light at all. So they utilized that person, and it wasn't like they used a transgender person that is at least somewhat liked or respected. There's 2 conservative transgender women that are pretty well liked. Caitlyn Jenner and Blair White are 2 big conservative ones. So it's not like they used somebody like that. They chose the person that is going to bring the most attention to them. And that attention happened to be very, very bad. So I think Bud Light made a bad marketing choice, and they're now suffering from the consequences of that. I personally would not have used that person if I were trying to do inclusivity because it's too much of a fire starter.
And my question is, if they're trying to put themselves out there for another genre that they're not getting, any other genre, did that make you go, when you saw that ad, go, now I'm going to drink a Bud Light because there's someone that's going through what I'm going through on the can? Did that make you think, all of a sudden, I'm going to go drink a Bud Light now?
I did. I buy Bud Lights now. When I go to the bars, I do it just in support and in a form of protest. But from a business standpoint, am I a more valuable customer than the average person who drinks Bud Light? I don't think so. I'm just kind of doing it to help that cause or whatever, but I don't know if it was a great business decision. Yeah. I think Target, I have more thoughts on, because part of what took down Target was misinformation, whereas with the Bud Light, Dylan Mulvaney thing, it just was what it was. So I think a lot of the messaging with Target that got people to protest is they are providing all of this gender ideological underwear and stuff like that for children, which wasn't happening. So that gets people riled up. Children is another thing. If you bring up children, it gets everybody fired up. And I think we have seen multiple, political moves throughout the year where people are utilizing children to politicize a point. So I think that's a little bit different, but it's all under the same theme of, okay, now both sides are boycotting a lot. So now what?
Right. And then it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
I also feel, and I could be completely wrong on this one too, but I think it lands again in the middle where I don't care either way. I was never a Bud Light drinker. I'm not going to be one. I don't like it. That doesn't bother. None of that bothers me. Target to me bothers me a little bit because I think there is a 1% demographic that you're trying to target.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of this from a marketing perspective and leave all the politics out of it or culture out of it. From a marketing perspective, you're trying to reach 1% of the population, and yet you're putting it. And I don't know. I've never even seen this. I think they took them all down ahead of me being ever. Actually, I haven't been in Target for quite some time.
Yeah.
But from what I've heard and read, they were right at the front of the stores right as you walk in. So my question is, if you're trying to reach a 1% population and potentially alienating 99% of the population, is the right move to put it in front? Or if you'd have put it back where all the other clothes were and everything else was being marketed normally, would you still have reached that 1% and not pissed off the other 99%? Because in my mind, if that's in a part of the store where it belongs and you're not showcasing it, I don't think it would matter to the vast majority of people.
Yeah.
I think it's that thing of most of us are kind of in the middle. Most of us don't give a shit about most of it, but I don't want to push me on you, and I don't want you to push you on me.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
I'm all for it. Do what you need to do. I know you have videos about the bathrooms, the inclusive bathrooms.
Yeah.
I think the whole world should have this same bathrooms.
Right.
Like you said, like Europe has them, right?
Yeah.
Like the restaurants around here have unisex bathrooms. Just
Right.
make unisex bathrooms.
Right.
Don't make a big deal out of it.
Right.
Same thing with the marketing. Go reach whoever you want to reach. But whatever that is, know your audience and put it where it belongs. Or you could tell me, well, they weren't shoving it in your face. They were just showcasing it, and you took that as them shoving it in your face.
Right.
That may be the perspective I'm missing on that. It flows into the pronoun thing.
Yeah.
Or the speech, just in general, not just pronouns. But let me do what I do. You do what you do. But don't tell me what to do, and I won't tell you what to do. I think when it starts to cross that line, that's probably where I struggle.
Yeah. Makes sense.
If someone's telling me, no, this is how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
This is how you must think, and this is how you must operate. I think if I told anyone else that, they would tell me to take a flying fucking leap, right? But it seems like everyone's trying to tell people that, at least from the extreme outsides.
Yeah.
The media. And again, I think most people in the middle don't care.
Right.
Like, let me do my thing and you do yours.
Right. Couple of things there. I think one thing you'll notice is that the loudest voices about transgender issues on either side are not transgender people. So the people that they're actually trying to target is, pun intended, is all of the really, really loud supporters. Because this is a culture issue. Now everybody on the left is super for transgender stuff. Everybody on the right is super against it. So that's who they're actually trying to get.
Are they though? Or is it that's what's portrayed?
That's what's portrayed.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's what's portrayed. But now that it's a culture issue, now there's more emotion. There's more people participating. I don't know. I think I see it as, it's just like, any other one of our specialty months, Asian American Pacific Islander month or Black History Month. It's just one thing. But right now it's the hot topic and, it wasn't a great time to put all that stuff out for sure. But I don't know what to think about all of that stuff. I think of the Bud Light stuff and Target stuff differently. Bud Light stuff made sense to me. Target stuff, I'm like, it feels like an overreaction to me for most people.
Where do you think it goes from here?
I think it'll die down. So I don't know that the average person gives a shit about transgender stuff. Like, I give a shit because I'm transgender, but a vast majority of people, I would say, actually there was a really cool survey that USA Today did. And it was just stats on how Americans felt about transgender stuff. So people don't care about the bathroom stuff for the most part. People don't want kids underage getting hormones or surgery for the most part. People don't want transgender people to be discriminated against with jobs. The average American feels the average way about all of this stuff. I think right now what's happening is that both sides are kind of utilizing this issue to get attention, to get clicks, and to see if it's going to win them elections or not. And so we don't know if it's going to yet. I don't think it's going to yet. People don't want to talk in the political arena. It's hard to talk about economics. It's hard to talk about foreign policy. It's hard to talk about education and healthcare and all of those things. But everybody can weigh in on what is a woman. That's easy. We can all have a drink and we can start talking about that and whatever. And that's why this is such an issue. It's because everybody can weigh in. And it's kind of a fun thing to talk about too. Sure. You take all the emotions and stuff like that out of it. It's like you can make jokes about it. It's just like a funny thing to talk about. So I think that after this election season, it'll probably die down a little bit. My only concern is what is the irreparable harm that it's going to do to people like me? That is my only concern.
If it dies down.
If somebody passes a law and then it dies down. Because in Florida, they just passed a law recently that restricts nurse practitioners from being able to prescribe gender affirming care. Well, that didn't hit all the kids, that hit all of the adults, and stuff like that is done intentionally. In Phoenix, there was a law proposed that would ban drag queens from appearing in public in any sort of capacity. Well, by the definition of a drag queen was so vague that if I'm walking in front of your children out in Old Town Scottsdale, that could flag me. And now what? I'm not allowed to exist in front of anybody's children. Stuff like that. Now, would anybody take me to jail over stuff like that? No, but they could.
It feels a little backwards. I understand what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I understand who they're trying to protect.
Yeah.
But when you put such a broad stroke on it, you're going backwards.
Yeah, and maybe I'm just anxious, but I don't want to be the collateral damage of any law.
Yeah. Well, you're on the front lines. It feels like the battle is more than it's ever been. And it's just bubbling up under the surface, and unfortunately or unfortunately, you are one of the on the front line of that. So hopefully there's no collateral damage. There should never be collateral damage in this type of a situation. But people get, like you said, so fired up about that. You know, the what is a woman thing you mentioned is really interesting. It's a fun question.
Yeah.
It's super annoying the way it's presented all the time. Like you watch some clips, and I watched the movie, and then now you see it happening on Congress. If you watch any congressional hearings, someone will come out of nowhere and say, "Could you tell me what a woman is?" You know? And I can't stand it when it comes from politicians, because you know what they're trying to do.
Right.
They're trying to pigeonhole you, and so that they can get a clip, and they're really not interested in what you determine that.
Right.
But it leads to a bigger question in my mind, which is, how do the women feel about the transgender movement?
Yeah.
When you see Riley Gaines and all these other people out there saying things that are right or not right in their minds, how does that affect the women?
I think women have a lot of grievances that are like should be validated. Like, for example, the sports issue. It doesn't matter how many hormones I take. I'm always going to be stronger than your average woman. I should probably not play sports with women. I should probably play co-ed sports or sports with men. Now when I say that, I get heat from my own side, but it's just, the facts support the facts at the end of the day. I think in terms of definitions, I think, the transgender community also needs to take a little bit of accountability for how annoying we've been over the pronouns and the definitions and stuff like that over the past couple of years. That really made people resent us a little bit more than they need to. When somebody asks me the question, what is a woman? I'm able to easily say it's a human adult female. And then I'm able to also say, I have the freedom to wear whatever I want to wear and live as whoever I want to live as. And whoever wants to refer to me as a woman, which is what I want them to do, is able to do that. I don't see how that affects anybody negatively.
It doesn't.
So there's just like a dose of moderation that we can take. My perspective is, people like me should probably stay out of women's sports.
I don't think you need a lot of facts on your side either. I think you can just look at it and go, well, hold on a second. Why aren't there transgender males competing?
Yeah.
Why doesn't that happen? Why aren't the football teams have transgender males on them? And it's just the facts of life on that point, like, because they would probably get run over.
Yeah.
By the big old linebackers.
Yeah, we can't have everything at the same time. We can have everything I want, just not at the same time. And I think that's the sports thing. I wish that more of us could just leave on the table. I think another thing, nobody under 30 should be the representative of any community. And yet, whenever people talk about the transgender community, they're usually, highlighting crazy people who are in their mid-20s or who are younger. I think a lot of elder transgender people would have very similar views to me in regards to a plethora of issues. It's just, some of this stuff is just common sense. I think that we should take what we need and leave everything else. I don't think that I am the same as a woman. I think that in God's eye, I have just as much value as one. That's a difference. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that more of us need to come to terms with. We don't have to be the same, but we can be worth the same, and that's okay.
Yeah. How about extrapolating further the argument of, well, I can identify as whatever I want to identify? I mean, to me, that feels so disconnected from the transgender movement, but somehow that's been brought into the same exact conversation. Well, my kid is a cat. You heard that story. And I want the litter box there. Yeah. And somehow that gets tagged on to the transgender argument. And now you're dealing with, where do you draw that line? Because they're attaching it to your story.
Yeah, that's very, very tough. I talked about this in a recent video that I made, that there needs to be a solid definition of transgender for us to discuss this. So for me, a transgender person is somebody who's going through surgical and medical means in order to transition, right? But again, the people who are making the loudest noise from our community are people who have typically not done that and feel like they can identify as whoever they want to and say whatever. And those are the voices that are getting highlighted for good reason, because they're sensational and also they're ridiculous and being discussed. But they've kind of co-opted our community in the last 20, 30 years in order to be able to get our medical issues covered by insurance. We had to classify what we're going through as a medical problem, gender dysphoria. So you get that diagnosis because you have so much depression that you would maybe not be alive unless you transition, which is what it is like for me. So there is a distinction. I think that part of the right politically is having a pushback to the idea that you can identify as everything and that's everybody's reality. And I think that pushback is fair. I also feel that way as well. My delineation, so how I usually talk about this subject is I kind of see being trans as a spiritual experience. So, you can have your religion, you can be, Muslim or Christian or Jewish, and I'm not going to question your religion too much, and I'm gonna be respectful when it comes to it. That's basically what I ask for with the transgender stuff. I don't think that I'm beyond any reproach, and I'm open to anybody, trying to understand me, but that's as much as I think is fair. I think some people on my side are asking for a little bit too much. I don't think the minute that you think that you're a woman, you become a woman. From any perspective, I don't know if there's ever going to be a day where I'm like, I'm biologically female. I don't believe that. I just know that I'm going to live and work towards the goal of living that way and just do my own thing. And when, I don't necessarily want to ask people to suspend their reality to accommodate me, even though many people are. But there will come a day in my transition where it will not feel that way, I hope.
That's a really good analogy to bring it back to religion, as almost everybody has some form of religion. And yet we all have coincided for hundreds of years, thousands of years with all those different religions. Some of the religions in my mind are super quacky, and some of them make some sense.
Yep.
And some of them require you to believe things that are frankly unbelievable. But that doesn't mean you should go to that person, like you said, and say, well, what you're saying is unbelievable.
Right.
And they say, well, yeah, but it requires faith, but it's still unbelievable. So I think my point has always been, feel that, have your religion, but you can't force me to have your religion.
Yeah.
You just can't, because some of the things I think are quacky.
Yeah.
In certain religions.
Yeah.
It's a good analogy. Well, all right, let's flip over to business.
Okay.
Because you've had a tremendous path, and I've been lucky enough to have a front row ticket to most of it, to a lot of it, from when you came out of Yelp. And you were working in the call center in Yelp, selling, right? Selling. And you came, you switched jobs to sell as well, or in the marketing department, right?
Yeah, I was desperate to get out of sales because it just wasn't
sales.
my thing. Like, me now, I'm like a spreadsheets and creative type of person. And I was like, I'm good at selling, but I don't want to do it. And so I applied for a marketing job. You guys had video interviews at that time. And so I interviewed and I was happy to take that job.
And so tell me, let's fast forward to today. So that was 7 years ago?
Yeah, almost 8.
Almost 8 years ago. Okay, so fast forward to today. Was this the path that you thought you would be on?
No. And I want to thank you for your leadership and investing so much into me, because the path that I have been on is kind of crazy, and I wouldn't have had it anywhere else or without anybody who was able to collaborate with me and my talent. So I just want to thank you on camera. You've been such a great inspiration to me and such a help in my career.
Well, cheers.
The path was, I started doing marketing at this company. And basically, you guys had a director of operations at the time for all of the companies. And so that person left the company, and I was being the 23-year-old cocky sales kid that I was like, well, I should do that job. I want to do that job. And so I pulled, I think it was Eric and David into a room, and this was bad. I found the P&L for Life's Best Insurances. I found the P&L, and I knew how much that guy was getting paid. I printed it out. I wrote down all of my accomplishments. And then I came into the room with them. I printed this out, gave it to them. I'm like, okay, this is how much he's making. I could do this job in my sleep. Give me this job. That's what I wanted it to be like. Instead, what happened is I had a panic attack in the middle of asking them for that money, and then I left, and I was like, I couldn't speak for the rest of the day. And that's really when my relationship with you started, because I think it was like 3 weeks. It was you, Jess, David, Eric, and me in a room. I cannot believe you guys accommodated me to this
I remember
level.
the couch.
The couch,
I
yes.
remember the couch.
And you were sitting there and you explained to me why I was not ready for that job yet. So you were like, okay, I know you want this job, but in order to be qualified for this job, you have to know what this department does, and this department does, and this department does. And you don't. And so what we're going to do with you instead, we're going to make you a manager, and you will start here. And so I was like, fuck it, I'll take it. I was so happy. And you stuck to your word. Every year I oversaw a different department until I grew into my job. And you were 1,000% right in making that call, because I didn't know what I was doing 7 years ago. I had to learn the hard way.
Well, there's some things to unpack there, because I get all the time, we do these videos on what does it take to get to the next level, how to ask for a raise, how to, and you are a mastermind at that. You know, you've taken on new things every year because you come and asked for it. And I think that's really important to say, because it's really easy as someone that works with you to overlook all the good things. Not overlook, but you just get used to it. It's almost like you get into a marriage and you just get used to you're married to this beautiful person.
Yeah.
Or they know your twerks, you know theirs, and it's all good. And you can tend to take advantage of it, not intentionally or in a malicious way, but you just start to get used to it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I think that happens with employees a lot.
Yeah.
And then they're working, they're trying to work harder, they're trying to do more, and they're going, I'm not getting a raise, I'm not getting a promotion, I'm getting nothing new, and I don't know why. And only until that person goes, well, I found another job, I'm leaving. I learned this the hard way early on, is I'm leaving, I'm going back to where I came from, or I've got a new job. And then go, oh, I don't want to lose that person.
Yeah.
Well, shit, let me match the offer. But by that time, I realized, I did that a couple times and got the person to stay. And then 6 months later, they were gone anyway.
Yeah.
And so I realized when it gets to that point, their heart's checked out. Like, you know, I'll go back to the marriage. Once someone starts cheating, their heart's gone.
Yeah.
And you can try to make all the accommodations you want at that point and say all the I loves you and bring home all the flowers you want, but that's gone. It's already done. And I think that's where most employers fail, is they take that for granted. This person is doing an awesome job, continues to do better, and you just are used to it. And the person never speaks up.
Yeah.
And so 2 years later, they go, well, fuck it. If I'm not going to get my accolades here, I'm going to go find another job. And they will find another job because they're talented.
Right.
Thankfully, you speak up at the end of every year, or sometimes now in the middle of the year, and say, I'm ready for something else. Like, it's time to grow. And hopefully that you still see a path where there's, you know, growth coming, because you have so much more to offer. Yeah,
I feel like you and I are both very active in our business relationship. I think that, you know, Eric and David are as well. And so I'm very grateful for that. And it's easier said than done, because obviously, you know, you and I work together, but I have a ton of employees, and to be on top of making sure that they're fulfilled in their career is easier said than done, for sure. I think the one thing that I wish, when I'm talking to my employees and I'm telling them how to grow, one thing that I say a lot that they have a very hard time internalizing is money comes after you provide value first. The value has to come first. And so in any of our conversations about any additional compensation, or I want this or I want that, that's the first thing I come with. I'm usually like, okay, this is what I have done, but that's already in the past. This is where I'm growing to, and this is what it's going to do for this organization. And that's why I think a lot of those conversations have gone well, because I can, you know, fulfill those promises. Yeah. But the thing is, it's not like I expect the money first. I feel like I want to impress you and then ask you. It's kind of like sweetening up your parent before you're asking them for something as well.
That's like, exactly how it works.
Yeah.
And it has worked.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great, you know, at being a manager and the director at 30, you know, takes a little bit of chutzpah to be able to ask for it, first of all, but you don't go into it asking for it without already having provided something. I think that's a key.
And I kind of beat myself up about this, because I talked to Eric about this yesterday. I I see the contributions that you and Eric and David all make to the business, and I want so badly to be on that level. And I'm trying to grow to that level. I'm not there yet, but I think I like that I care about that stuff. And I've really tried to grow my skill set every day. And that's part of the reason why I started doing these TikToks, because ultimately all you need to run a business really is sales at the end of the day. So how do I utilize a platform to really bring more people to us? That's something that I want to, that's something that I think an executive level person needs to be able to do, be a rainmaker and make those decisions.
Mm-hmm. So is that your 5 years, 10 years? Where do you see life in general?
Oh goodness, that's tough. I didn't even think, to be honest with you, I didn't think I would be alive for this long. So this is crazy. I'm very happy now, but it's crazy. I think I see myself as an executive level person. I see myself, getting a lot of plastic surgery. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but I don't look like Jessica Rabbit in the next 10 years.
All right.
I see myself with like a nice home and a family, and really my biggest aims are to be comfortable in myself and to be independent in myself, and also to be able to help my family. Most of the people in my family, we've come from nothing, we have nothing. And despite them not approving of who I am, I still feel the need to provide for them in that capacity. On top of that, most people who are similar to me, transgender people, gay people, they're not doing well financially. They're not doing well in their careers. They don't, part of the lesson in being transgender is seeing the limitations of love. People can love you all they want, but they will abandon you. And the community has not been empowered. We fall into victimhood because of that. And I want to be the person that says, I was abandoned too. My life circumstances were really hard too. But I came out of this because I worked my fucking ass off every day until I got everything that life had to offer. That's what I want to be to people. And so that's kind of what fuels a lot of my pursuits right now. I really want to elevate the humanity of people who are like me.
Well, that's a good spot to say you're an inspiration, Jessica Rabbit.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks for coming on. It's been fun.
Thank you. It's been fun.
All right. See you.
Acrylic Financial Incorporated is a registered investment advisor, and the opinions expressed by those on this show are their own and do not reflect the opinions of Acrylic Financial. All statements and opinions expressed are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Information presented is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for any individual. Listeners are encouraged to seek advice from a qualified tax, legal, or investment advisor to determine whether any information presented may be suitable for their specific situation. Past performance is not indicative of future performance, and some guests may have been paid a fee to be interviewed for this show.